Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you here today. We're chatting about house affordability, which is a hot topic for anyone in any generation, I think, to have that concern that prices have skyrocketed on homes over the last couple of years. They're starting to come back down to a more reasonable trajectory. But now mortgage rates are a little bit higher. So, are you even able to afford a home? And Andy Prasky is the leader of the preferred home team with Remax Advantage Plus. You may have heard him previously on the Real Estate Radio Hour, which he hosted for years and years on WCCO. But in his actual day job, he's a realtor and knows the market in Minnesota so well. So Andy is going to give us a little rundown on what he thinks is happening in the market.
Well, hey, thank you for that more than kind intro. I used to advertise and have we used to have a show. For years, we talked. This is what we did every Saturday morning. We would talk to people with real life situations. And that's the point of doing this series for us, is to really talk to people on a real level and take all of the agendas out of things and actually be straight with people, give them information so they can make decisions that are right for them. And I'll be the first one to tell you, it's not always right to buy a house just because, you're going to hear a lot of stuff out there. Sometimes it's not right to wait either. But it doesn't mean you have to do it. We just want to make sure that you feel informed and that we get you the straightest answers we can. So, today, a lot of people are concerned and everybody keeps, talking about, interest rates, and they talk about affordability. And so we had a real sweet spot for a while here where we had, everybody's income was going up. Rates were staying down, which allowed prices to go up because we could afford more on a payment, right? And then now interest rates have jumped up due to the inflationary fighting tactics, and they're trying to fight inflation. So they're trying to slow the economy down. What that does is that makes those same houses seem more expensive or more unattainable for the average buyer. And so what we've done is over the years, we try to take a look at, like, where's the housing market going? And it's really been simple economics, guys, that I've seen, where it's supply and demand. And so, there's just not enough supply because so many people have financed with 3% or 3.5%. Those houses now are so secure and their payments are so low. I don't think those people are going to enter the market. I think what they'll end up doing is I think some of those people will hold those properties that they maybe bought as a first-time home. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. They may hold it as an investment property or as a VRBO or Airbnb or whatever they want to do for the future, and go out and acquire another property in the future. I've got other people that are still buying houses today. And what's nice about today that wasn't 6 months ago, and we'll kind of get into this, I'm sure, a little bit later, was when you were a buyer, you were really misused. I mean, you were abused and told what to do and pay crazy prices and no inspections. And I'll tell you what, I as an agent was absolutely sick about the way the market was treating our buyers. And, from a perspective that you want people to feel comfortable, right? It's one thing to get the best price. It's another thing to gouge people, right? Or what these crazy like demands on people were paying 25 or 50,000 more. And that's not happening right now. We're seeing houses, really nice houses listing. You can actually come back with your mom and your dad or your cousin or your brother and look at the house in a day or so in some cases. Some cases are paying closing costs now. They're for sure letting us do home inspections now again. And so you as a buyer are buying correctly again. Now, the rates that wrestling match that's why I brought Rebecca in here today too, to talk to us about, what do we do? How do we strategize about, let's say we lock in a higher rate. Can we refinance in a year or two and not, so that's kind of the concept of today's seminar. Can we do it? What kind of deposits do we need? What's happening around the country?
And what can you expect?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great place to kick off. So we're chatting today about, can I afford to buy a house? And Rebecca Guarrero, I'm going to butcher your name. I'm so sorry. Rebecca
That's
Guarrero
okay. It's
Beach.
Guerrero. Yeah.
Guerrero.
Guerrero Beach.
And Rebecca, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm a mortgage loan officer with Fairway Independent Mortgage. Been in the business since 2018, but I am the third generation of women in mortgage lending. So from the day I was born, pretty much we've talked mortgages. So very well versed in that. But just love educating people and, figuring out what is the best program for every client. Everyone's different. So we just learn a little bit about you, educate you on the way. So really happy to be here. I'm very excited that Andy asked me to be on because Andy is great at what he does, and I would not have come on if I didn't know, like, and trust Andy. So thank you, Andy, for having me on.
Well, and we have great conversations. One thing that I won't have anybody ever on a webinar, seminar, Facebook Live, anything, unless I know they're good. And Rebecca is not better than good. She's great. And we do a lot of business together. We do a lot of new construction purchase. We do a lot of existing. We have kind of for those of you, we have a larger real estate team as well. And Rebecca helps my team with buyers and getting pre-qualifications and making sure that when we write an offer that what we put on paper makes sense, right? And so that's why she's here. And she loves cars like I do too. So you can see behind me, I've got my little rack of cars over here. So we got that in common as well.
Yeah, BMW specifically for me, but cars are good.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the economic uncertainty right now. I think that's really probably the elephant in the room. What's on everybody's mind, and why you wanted to talk to the people out there that were concerned about buying with kind of uncertain economic times.
For sure. So I don't know if you guys want to read through this, or if you want me to, I'll read the first one here. When economic uncertainty dust settles, those buyers and sellers who were on the sideline will jump back into the housing game. Demographic trends support elevated purchase demand in the years to come. So it's a question of when, not a matter of if, the housing for the housing market. So again, supply and demand. So this is why people are saying, the economy feels like we're headed towards trouble, but why is housing staying positive, or why is housing staying above that? And it is really, guys, it's that simple old economics 101, supply and demand. I mean, there are more buyers than we have houses for sale. Now, the trick is to have houses that people can afford or attainable, right? And that's probably the biggest thing that I think a lot of people on the under 300 price point feel. I mean, it's very competitive.
Yeah, I see it all day long too. I work with a lot of first-time home buyers, so it is still a challenge for them right now. So I always tell people, just start right away so that you can have as much time as possible to get into the home that fits you best, because you may have some hurdles along the way, but we're here with you to make sure that we get you into the right place at the right time.
Right.
What are you hearing, Rebecca, in terms of questions from consumers on rising mortgage rates?
That is the biggest
Not to
thing.
put you
Yes,
on the
rising
spot.
mortgage rates, just the whole rise in mortgage rates, which, yes, reality says that in January we had rates that started with a 2, and now here in October, almost November, we're seeing them with a 6 or a 7. So it's a drastic change in a short amount of time that a lot of people weren't ready for. So some people got out of the market. They priced themselves out of the market because they waited. And they couldn't afford the monthly payment anymore. That's not to say we can't get you into a house. We just have to, readjust things and see where you can actually comfortably fit. Because I don't want anyone to ever overextend themselves to trying to get into a home. But, we do think that mortgage rates come even the end of the year, more likely towards the mid to end of next year, but we expect them to come down, closer to the 5.5 range. That's the average of what all the experts are saying. So I'm very, very optimistic that that's going to happen, and hopefully sooner rather than later, so that those people who, like I said, were priced out of the market are now able to come back into the market. But then the flip side of that is potentially, like we just said, the supply and demand, that all those people who are waiting to get into a home because interest rates are too high, everyone else is going to come back to the market too. So it's going to be more competitive. Prices could be higher. So that's just something that you need to look at when you are looking at the big picture. So yes, interest rates are higher. We do think they're going to come down. And the great thing is, if you do purchase a home now and have a higher interest rate, you can always refinance when interest rates do come down. So that's always a big thing that we want to tell people is, your interest rate, you're not going to keep that interest rate for the full 30-year term. You're going to keep it until interest rates come down, and you'll get the lower rate at that time.
And just for a quick reference on that too, guys, I think that there's, over the years when I've listed other people's homes, and as we've been in situations like this in the past, where rates start challenging people's affordability or comfort levels, and then you look back and we go to sell their house, and they've refinanced that house while they've owned it for 15 years, sometimes 5, 6, 7 times. And so just remember, you buy the house, you date the rate.
Exactly.
Are you seeing, Andy, too, that buyers are having more bargaining power now that, rates are a little bit higher, prices, there's not quite as much competition for certain homes. There still is for some homes on the market, but for certain homes in different price brackets, there isn't as much competition. Are you seeing your buyers have a little more bargaining power?
Well, for sure. I think that there's, that's been the biggest experience in a good way for a buyer. So if you were looking at hey, I want to go into a market where everything's moving 100 miles an hour, I can't make any decisions, and I might get potentially set up to fail. That was the market we were in. Okay. Now we're into a market now where we can take our time, make decisions that are right for the buyer. Now, granted, the interest rate is higher, so the payments have adjusted. But what I would tell people is that you look at, you're buying the right house at the right location, and you're making sure that it's a good decision for you with the home inspections and everything else. And so we position you for success. Now, let's say houses appreciate over the next couple of years, which even though people say, oh, we're challenging this, you look at the Mortgage Brokers Association, they're still looking at appreciation. There's only 1 out of the 8 that I look at that are trying to say, hey, houses will not appreciate. So again, the supply and demand game will keep pressure on that. So as you walk into that house and then you refinance down the road or whatever else, you might be making the best decision you've ever made in your life, right? Because now you're in the best, like there wasn't any houses available in that neighborhood or that school district. Now there is, right? So when people are scared, sometimes it's the time to jump in. And that's all we're trying to say today is that, when you look at the marketplace, because out of 10 people, let's say 10 buyers that are out there, and let's say half of them said, we're going to sit on the sidelines and literally suck our thumbs and wait until the market comes back where we like it. Those people will pay more for their houses. And in the big picture of life, you want to pay less and then refinance. But that's scary sometimes. And so that's why we're trying to put together all the professionals that we can so that you comprehend completely where you're like, no brainer, comfortable, got it, let's go.
I think that's so important to have kind of that mindset of the rate is not forever. And the rate is always going to fluctuate. If you look at rates throughout history, they've always fluctuated. But as a first-time home buyer, that might feel a little bit scarier because you just don't know how it works.
Right.
Yeah, for those first-time home buyers out there, they think that, oh my gosh, a rate that starts with a 7 is just so high, when historically speaking, over the last 40 years, the average interest rate is an 8% interest rate. So we're actually still under the average interest rate over the past 40 years. So it's not like we have outrageous interest rates. It's just the fact that we went from 2s to 7s in the span of 10 months that has caused such a big uproar with everybody. But interest rates are still good. And as you know, you can always refinance when it comes down.
Yeah, I think I think you nailed it. The big uncomfortableness of it is how fast it moved and how much it moved. So like if rates were at 7% and they went to 21%, everybody like, oh my God. Well, we went from 2 to 7 or what, you know what I'm saying? So it's the ratio seemed ridiculous because on paper, yes, they have gone up, over 100%. But in reality, here's the thing, you want to sit down, and this is something that, Rebecca and I have talked about a million times. Lenders that borrow money on the same amount of money, it's not the same. One lender could have a higher interest rate, but the other lender will be at higher rate, but they may have a lower payment. Mortgage insurance and things like, can you have a seller now pay that mortgage insurance premium up front, which we try to negotiate as many times as we can. Then you don't have mortgage insurance, so you don't have to put 20% down. You can get, literally, sometimes we're doing 5 and 10% down, and they're getting these upfront premiums paid by the sellers. And then you're not even having to deal with that extra, 150, 200 bucks a month that you're paying in mortgage insurance. So your payments are lower. So you really got to take a look at the entire picture.
Yeah, there's so many creative ways to do that too, Andy, like you just mentioned. So there's a lot of things that as a buyer, you're not the mortgage lender. So it's not something that you think about, that a mortgage lender would then say, hey, did you think about doing this rather than this? Here's the reason why I think so. And as the first time buyer, you're like, wow, didn't even know that was a possibility. Thank you so much for assisting me with that. And that's what we like to do here at Fairway on our team, is just making sure that we do what's best for you as the client. So just making sure that we see everything and adjust accordingly. And with the slowing of the market that you had mentioned, Andy, it's really good to see that. Just for example, for me, the purchase agreements that I've been getting have had the seller paid closing costs. They have had inspections being done. So they've had all of these things that, 6 to 12 months ago, or even further, you would never even imagine being able to get. So even if interest rates are higher, it's a good time to buy with the opportunities that are out there.
So at what point do you start, or should you start talking to your team, your home buying team, about what options you have? How early should you start talking about that?
Well, for me, I was like, you want to start at least 6 months ahead of time for me, as the getting everything, all the numbers put together. Because there could be some things that when we get documents, application, pull credit, that we may see, oh, this could potentially hinder us. We need to tackle this right up front now. So that gives us some time. The 6 months is a really good chunk of time to be able to remedy any sort of things that we have in our way, to then be able to get you into that home in a timely fashion. So that's what I always tell my buyers, specifically, at least 6 months. But even if you're 12 months, 2 years down the road, it doesn't hurt to talk to somebody.
Well, and guys, the other thing is, I don't think a lot of people realize how much, with all the credit pulls we have and all the different things we're buying and the credit cards and the Venmos and the whatever, how much money's moving around, right? And how it's so easy today to blemish your credit, more so now than ever. And there's people that say, oh, I'm a 700 plus credit score, I'm an 800, whatever they are. And you get to running the credit and you realize, but it shows a couple slow pays on here. And you're like, I paid those on time. And those, something simple as a slow pay that can throw you into a 0.25% higher rate. And all of a sudden you have somebody like Rebecca say, hey, here's how I fix this. I do this, 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 and this. And now all of a sudden, now you're saving $300 a month on a payment. It's worth. So that's what we're saying is, the other thing I would say is this: if I'm going to take you out hunting, okay, or whatever journey you want to go on, I like hunting because as we're heading into the fall season here. Hunting. What's interesting for me is that you wouldn't go out hunting if you didn't have bullets in your gun. Okay, why would you go out there unless you're sightseeing? You want to go sightseeing, you can do that online. You can drive around, you can do open houses, whatever. But if you're actually going out there and you're looking for a house that you want to secure, that meets your price criteria, meets your neighborhood criteria, bedrooms, bathrooms, you don't want to screw around, is what I would say, because those opportunities are coming along. And it's not that they're moving that fast. It's just that when they come along, you don't want to let them slip through your fingertips. And then you have to wait another 6 months until that same, mirrored image of a house for you comes along again. And, or you always, like I always say, you're always sorry and you compare. Oh, remember that one that we missed? I hear that more than I want to. And that's where I say to people, when you prepare ahead of time, so you make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row, you got gas in the tank, bullets in the gun, whatever you want to call it. And when we go out, we're not going to fail. It's a whole different strategy, planning and prepping.
I think that's so interesting. And the other piece of the conversation that you're both probably having with clients right now is just supply and demand, because it was so crazy for most of 2021 and then into 2022. And it feels like it's flipped a little bit as we've gone through summer of 2022 and now we're into fall. How is that affecting the hunt for a home?
I don't know. You want to jump on that, Rebecca, or do you want me to jump in there?
Well, I mean, for me, I was just kind of thinking it as the interest rates that, people are thinking the market's flipping to a buyer side. And I'm going to let Andy talk more about this. But I think it's kind of like the similar thing with interest rates, that we went from 2 to a 7. So interest rates are insanely crazy high. And now that we see a little slowdown, it's now a buyer's market, when that's not the case. It's just slowed down a little bit. Still for sure a seller's market out there. But that's what I have to say on that. I'm going to let Andy talk more about it.
Just looking at it from a numbers perspective, right? So you look at like marketplaces that have, we may psychologically think it's a buyer's market right now, that, hey, you're the only buyer out there, you're the only game in town. And what's sad is that you realize you're not. And then you get out there and you start looking, and in the last couple of years, even with uncertainty going on, with this, all this, whatever that cold thing we went through a couple of years, I don't even want to acknowledge it anymore. I'm so tired of it. As I have sniffles, the idea there is that, when you look at houses, right, and you've been in this situation where people have been holding back or whatever else, and now basically there's a, you have a calculator, and the calculator was $7, and then now it's $12. And the people that wanted to buy a calculator were waiting to go from 7 down to 5. It never happened. Well, guess what might happen again, guys? Now you go to buy it at 12, it might be 14. So housing, one thing that's predictable is that historically housing makes 4%. Okay. So when there's years where it makes 18, and there's years now that we're looking at maybe 4%, the average has been 4. Okay. So when you do that average math, the last couple of years, the hype in the market or the lack of supply has pushed the demand out of control. And so people were paying, and I saw this a ton, where Rebecca and I would have a house, I'd have it listed, and then the young couple would come in and they would literally offer 25,000 over. And that was a gift from their parents, because their parents were so tired of them not getting a house. They said, hey, we'll give you a little bit of your inheritance early. Let's just get you in that house. And so there's crazy things happening. So anyway.
And you are a big Dave Ramsey fan, Andy. I know you are partnered with him on his home buying program.
Yes.
And even Dave Ramsey is very much in, I've seen a couple of his presentations that he's done with how volatile the market has been. And he is a big believer in supply and demand and how that impacts pricing in the market, and that you're not going to see a huge fall off on housing. It's just, you're going to see a little bit more of an equilibrium hit as, prices adjust with interest rates.
Sure. I mean, look at you guys, like the car industry the last year and a half, right? Where, they didn't have cars. And so all those dealerships that misbehaved and marked up over retail and took full advantage of the marketplace. And you felt you needed a car. You'd still go buy one. You felt horrible buying one, and you resented the person you bought it from, but you still you needed a car. I think some of that was happening with housing, guys. I really do. And I think what's nice for the buyers is it's shifting back to where they have more control over what they're purchasing. But don't kid you, we talked about it being a buyer's market versus a seller's market. A balanced market, you guys, is where we start getting to where it's like, what is it, 3.5, 4 months of housing. Once you get to 6 months, it starts shifting over to what they call a buyer's market. We're nowhere near those numbers right now. And with the amount of people that have low interest rates on their existing houses, and I'll throw one more quick stat at you because it's interesting. In the state of Minnesota, that over 40% right now, it's right at 40% of the houses. So 4 out of 10 houses you drive by are paid for free and clear. Think about that.
That's a huge number.
Huge number. People are paying off their houses, especially the older crowd, right? They don't want to deal. They're not moving to the new housing because they can't afford it. They can't do the one level living. So they're paying off their houses, sitting on mortgages. And do those people get desperate? No. When you have a house that's paid for free and clear, there's no motivation unless you need to, for physical reasons, move somewhere else. So those people will hold their property. So even if the economy goes to heck, 40% of the houses are not going to be in jeopardy of having any kind of situation happen. Then there's a majority of the rest of the 60% that has what they call aggressive, equity, where they're over 50%. It's ridiculous how much equity is out there right now, and equity equals options. When you have equity sitting in your pocket and you become a homeowner, if you're not a homeowner, this is one of the cool things about being a homeowner, is that once you got an equity in your pocket, you have value, right? You can make decisions that some other people can't that don't have money.
And what you're seeing, if you're watching this, is the home equity gains from 2022. So the national average in home equity gains was over $60,000. Locally in Minnesota, it was $28,000. And cool? That's a huge number.
Yeah. Even in this market where you think, my gosh, this market's crazy and everything's going on and everything's negative, the average homeowner still appreciated 28,000, guys, right to today. So from the beginning of the year to today.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this. Just the idea that home equity is the major source of wealth creation for most American households. If you're not in the game, you get nothing. Like if you're stopping and not buying right now because you're worried about the inflation costs or the price of a home or the cost of interest, you're just gaining nothing. You still have to pay for a place to live, but You're not gaining any equity from it.
And rents have skyrocketed over the years. And so what a lot of my younger first-time buyers are doing too is they're buying houses and then they're renting out bedrooms, if you will, to their buddies or friends or whoever, coworkers, whatever. And now all of a sudden you have a bedroom. When I was out of college, bedrooms, you could rent somebody's bedroom for $400, and then you even get to use the kitchen. Nowadays, these guys are getting $1,200 for a bedroom.
Wow.
One bedroom. Think
So are
about
you
that.
seeing,
You get 2 roommates, house payments is basically paid for. So
are you seeing a lot of parents that are investing in a home with their kids? And what age ranges are you seeing that? Is it across the board, or is it particular age ranges that you're seeing that happen for?
go ahead, Rebecca. Why don't you answer that?
Sure, sounds good. So I am actually seeing it a lot. I'm actually working with a mom and a daughter right now who they're trying to figure out what is the best route for them to take. Does mom buy the house for daughter and then do contract for deed and sell it back to her? Do they go on as a co-signer with the child? And so it happens a lot. So I always tell people the first thing is, do you have someone who can help you as a co-signer or as a gift or whatever it may be? And there's a lot of people who do have that opportunity. And I wouldn't say that it's any specific age. I mean, I know that, people in their early 20s and even in their mid to late 30s are still having their parents help them. So it's not something I know sometimes people can be embarrassed or ashamed that I still need my parents when I'm in my 30s. Well, I don't think I'm ever not going to need my parents, and I'm 33, so I'm not embarrassed to say that at all. And you shouldn't be either. I mean, even if you need their help right now, if you get into a home and you receive the equity and you get all of this stuff and you're paying down your mortgage every month, you're getting more and more equity every month, sooner or later, you won't need them financially because you will be financially stable in your home. One thing I wanted to bring up back to the rental part was, I'm telling people, if you don't like the 7% interest to buy a home, just keep in mind that if you're renting, that's 100% interest. You're making $0 from that. So that's just something to consider too. If you have a way to purchase a home and you're ready to purchase a home, I say do it, because you start getting that equity the day that you sign those papers. Nobody else does.
I used to talk to my kids like this. I'd say, okay, so you rent an apartment, or let's say you rent a house, for example. And here's the deal I'll make you guys as your landlord. If you guys stay here for 30 years and you literally pay me rent for 30 years, at the end of the 30 years, not only will I give you all the appreciation on the house that you just made, because now it's gonna be worth, potentially 2-3 times more than what you paid for it. Number one, but number two, I'm just gonna let you stop paying payments to me, and I'm just gonna give it to you. People go, well, that'd be the coolest deal in the world. And I go, then buy a house. It's because it's the same rules. It just feels different because we've been trained that, oh, I don't want to be tied down with a house. You ever had somebody that you owe a lease to chase you for a lease? They'll wreck your life. You skip out on an apartment. Good luck getting a car. Good luck getting a credit card. I mean, they will attack you. So you're still making commitments. You just don't realize what you're really making. So.
Well, speaking of that, the cost of rent has gone up so significantly over the last
there you go
40, 50 years. And if you look at this chart, look at how steep this climb is, especially over the last 10 years. Is this driving more of your clients to buy?
I think ultimately, I think, and I keep jumping in, but it's still, you meet young people today. And I still think they all think it'd be cool to own a house, right? That's what grandpa and grandma did. That's what we want to do. Or maybe you're a first American, it's your first generation in America and you want to live the American dream and own a house. I think it's so cool. And, people don't have this option in other countries. That's a crazy part about it. I meet people all the time from overseas where they're building a big, beautiful house with us. And they go, this wasn't even an option for us at our other place. We were a 6th generation renter in the village we lived in with our family, and we were living with our grandparents. So you talk about it's very American for us to say, I don't want any help from my parents. Every other culture in the world, they're a family, man, and they work together. And I don't understand why it's not becoming more acceptable here. And just because we're all independent Americans doesn't mean that we can't rely on each other and support each other a little bit. And I think that, the multi-generational housing is going to be something where grandma and grandpa don't want to move out of the big house because, the new house they want to move into, the one level living, costs as much as the big house. So they feel like they're getting ripped off when they sell. So what I think you're going to start seeing is grandkid, granddaughter, whatever, moving in with their children, renting the upstairs with the option to buy. And then as grandma and grandpa get older, they also get a little free care. right? Maybe the kids get a little free daycare when grandma and grandpa are home on a Friday night and mom and dad want to go out. So I think there's some really cool benefits to multi-generational, and I think it's a great option for a lot of families. They should really look into it.
Are you seeing more multi-generational families buy right now?
Yes.
And what about building? Are you seeing, because you do a lot of new construction, are you seeing a lot of new builds accommodate multi-gen?
I'm seeing a lot of the like, for an example, if you take that, hey, I'm a immigrant, moved to America, got the great job, now I'm killing it, and I'm buying my big beautiful home. They always, and I love this about a lot of the cultures, they always will build a bedroom for mom and dad, and they always want it to be on the main floor, and they want it to be nice, they want it to be private, they want it to be respectful. It's cool. I love that, seeing that respect to the family. So they want mom and dad to come visit for a month or a month and a half at a time and stay with the family. And so it's pretty cool. It really is. And I think that there's so many neat things that are being done new construction wise. And what's neat about it though, too, guys, is this. So let's say not everybody wants to have a main level bedroom and a 3/4 bath on the main level. Well, that also can be an office. That can be your guest room. That can be your card room. That can be your, formal dining room. You want to design rooms when you're building to be multitaskable, right? So you can do multiple things with those rooms, multi-purpose. And that's what we guide people on when they build new, is to be multi-purpose.
Well, and I think that a lot more people are looking for a single family home because they like single family living, but they also want to find a way to kind of offset costs. So personally, when myself and my husband were looking for our house, we purposely were looking for something that had like a mother-in-law suite kind of thing. So there was a separate kitchen. Not only it was for us thinking about future for our parents, on if they need to move in with us, we'll have a place and it can be completely private. They'll have a place, it'll be completely private, but they don't need to live with us right now. So what we're able to do is we can rent out. The bottom of our home, the basement of our home, has the kitchen, the living room, everything, so that now they're kind of paying our mortgage for us. So I not only get to own my home, I live here, it's mine, I can do what I want with it, but now I have someone offsetting costs in my house for me. So that's another benefit of looking at the multi-generational homes, is even if you don't have your family living there, which good for you if that's what you're planning. I love it, just like myself and my husband. But if they're not living with you yet, you can have some income producing with that. So I think it's a twofold thing, that you can go ahead and use it as a not just multi-generational, but multi-use for your property.
Courtney, what would we do with extra money? I don't know.
I don't know what you would do with extra money.
Pay off your house early. I don't know, go on an extra vacation, put those kids in private schools.
Mm-hmm. Yep, love it.
Well, if someone is on the fence or sure that they're going to make the next step, let's talk a little bit about what that process looks like today. So if you're just getting started, you are looking to build your team and figure out what the process and timeline is going to look like for you, even if you're not looking to really take the next step for another 2 years, I think it's important to start looking at some of this process now, because it's not a 3-month process to buy a house when you have the finance side of it, tooled in there. So here is the journey to buying a home. And Andy, I'm going to let you kind of take this away, because this is your pathway to purchase.
Yeah, this is kind of a generic version of a plan, right? So this is what we're kind of talking about, the sole, gist of what this whole kind of conversation today is about, is making a plan and looking at, who is the team around you, for example. It gives you a great example here. We can kind of follow along. You can read too as I'm talking, but, building your own team. So that's putting the key members together. And sometimes you don't have all the members. So if you meet one key player, let's say you find a real estate agent or a loan officer that you really like, and they may have people they can refer you to that are part of their team, right? Checking out, like it says here, checking out your credit score again, so there's no surprises, and then monitoring that as you're in the process. So if rates do change or things happen or something dings your credit, that we can repair that to make sure that you're getting the best rates possible at the time you're ready to purchase, right? Savings, while you're sitting on the sidelines waiting, pretend you're making that house payment. I always tell people this early, pretend you're already making that house payment and start stuffing that money away and saving if you can, right? It shows discipline, number one, but number two, it shows to yourself that you can handle it and you can do it and you're comfortable with it. That's another thing, right? So when you're not used to writing checks, you shake and you literally, for those of you that write checks, I just dated myself. Those of you that email your money in, or whatever, you still feel it, when you go through that activity of sending it. So savings is a great way to do it. Really basically knowing you can afford. I think that's where you meet somebody great like Rebecca and say, Rebecca, here's what I make. Here's what I have for expenses. What do you think would be a comfortable of that number to dedicate towards my house payment? And they'll tell you. And then they run the math backwards for you and they say, and that equates to this kind of a purchase price. Now it all works and it's easy and it's affordable, right? House hunting is, I think, the fun part now again, where they're actually inventory. Those of you that watch the newspaper or the news, if you will, inventory is up about 29%, which is good because now there's a few more houses to look at. There's variety again to look at. And then within that, there's fewer buyers because some of them got knocked out. So buyers went down a little bit. So you really have a nice environment. It's very fun to actually go shopping right now for a house. Very comfortable. And, number 6 now, you go out there when you actually make your offer because you've done all the homework above, makes it easy. So you've got your ducks in a row, you know what the payments are, you feel totally comfortable. So if you do have to make a faster decision than you normally would make in your normal business processing mind, you actually are comfortable because you got facts to back up your fears. And that's what I always say. If you can ever have facts to back up your fears go away, Appraisals are also another safety mechanism. So if you were uncertain about the price, or like I always say, when you write an offer, I always have the real estate agent do a quick market analysis of that house before you make that offer, because just because it's for sale doesn't mean that it's actually a good deal or that it's a bad deal. So when you run a market analysis, you can compare other sales in the area. And by looking at the actives, you know which way the market's moving. Okay. So then you can say, hey, I'm right in there with the market. I'm positioned perfectly. And then the appraisal will just, confirm that. Closing day, we've heard the phrase closing day. Once all the contingencies have been removed, the inspections are done, the appraisals are done, you have a date where everybody gets together and we all autograph and make it official, and they share the money, slides across the table, and then you become a homeowner, you get to move in that new house. And sometimes that's a little tricky too. Rebecca and I have dealt with that too, where sometimes you have a lease, right? And your lease is up at the end of December, but you sometimes can position it where we could help you maybe purchase the new house a little bit early, like November. And then you have a month to move all your stuff out of your apartment comfortably and get you into that new house. And it makes it makes it so sweet. If you try to do everything on the same day, but I mean, we've seen that, haven't we, Rebecca, where when you try to close everything on the same day and you stack them all tall and one little thing blows and you're like, the whole thing's wobbling and everybody's stressed out. It's so much nicer to be able to close and then close. So,
right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, not that it's impossible, but it's a little more added stress to that for sure. And I always tell people, like, with the home buying process, it's easily laid out. I mean, home buying is a very simple process. You go from step to step to step. There's just a lot of stuff that goes into each one of those steps. That's why you need to have the team that knows what they're doing, can properly educate you, and make sure that we get all the way to the end of that home buying path, because that's everyone's end goal, is to start from the very beginning and get you into that new home. So we're all here working together to get you there. And that's why you have to, the building of the team, that very first step is so important, because this process can take months, if not years, sometimes, if you don't find that right house, or you're not quite where you need to be financially or with your credit. But that's why you need to have those people that you know, like, and trust, because this process can take a little bit of time.
Amen, sister. I said, just like I always relate things to, like a restaurant, for example. You have your favorite restaurant with your favorite, maybe it's a roll or a steak or something fancy, right? And you're like, how does this restaurant, I walk in, sit down, and they serve it to me perfectly every time. There's a system to it, right? There's team members that buy correctly. They buy the right products. They put them in the right situation. The prep chefs have things, everybody works as part of that team, to the point of even where the person, the food manager, before that goes out, they make sure it has the perfect garnishment in the right spot, and they check the temperature, make sure it's perfect for you, and then they run that food. The food runner runs out. They serve it to you, and you're like, wow, what an experience, right?
Right. With the home buying process, it's the same thing. I mean, we have the real
Same thing.
estate agent and the loan officer are the two biggest players that everyone knows, but you have your insurance agent, the inspector, the appraiser, the title company, all of these other people who have their hands involved in the entire transaction. So just like the restaurant, home buying, same thing.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I talk about that, because, you know, like if you're watching this in today and you've never bought a house before, I try to always relate things to things that people understand. I mean, just like anything else in life, you know, some things can be purchased online successfully. And then sometimes when you buy like your jeans online and they look like they're the right size and you get them home and you can't even get one leg in them. We've all been there, right? So it's like some things you can't do online. And that's where I say, even buying a house, we want to try this house on before we just buy it online, right? So the apps that are out there are great, and they help us in the shopping process. But when it comes down to buying, I like to have a fitting room, and I like to make sure it's a good fit for you. And I like to go out there and actually make sure that the team knows what we're doing and how we're doing it, so that when you see the perfect pair, you're like, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you both for sharing so much insight today. I think it's great to be more educated when you're going into this process. And there's not, it's not something that you learn until you intentionally decide that you're going to take the next step. So if you are looking for more information on the process, or if you want to get in touch with either Andy or Rebecca, their information is on the screen. You can also join Andy for live question and answer on the Real Estate Radio Hour Facebook page every Thursday at 8 a.m. Central Time.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I truly appreciate both of you.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of the market, guys.
Don't.
We'll see you guys next time.
All right. See ya.